dismissive, smug, condescending,
snarky,
arrogant, snarky.
What?
His position was anybody that knows me knows that I don't hate black people. I'm not a racist. People were trying to tell him we all don't know you.
Right,
And
right.
Joe Budden addresses Rory's controversial tweets resurfacing, and the podcast talks about the cancellation of a former co-host of the Joe Budden podcast. No secret that Joe Budden and Rory have no love lost between the two. Sure, Joe Budden pretends like he's friends with Rory now, but at the time of the breakup, he was calling Rory everything but a child of God, a measly white man who destroyed his empire. And now that tweets have resurfaced, he's holding him accountable. But let's get into what the whole podcast did, and let's break down the dynamics that will be, kind of on play when all of these folks who used to know Rory talk about him. So the situation all stems from Rory talking about the GNX album and how it shouldn't win the Grammy in light of the Clips album, which a lot of people feel is better than the GNX album.
I think they'll give it to Clips, let God sort them out, but won't give it to him in the album of the year category. I don't think they'll snub the Clips twice. I don't think the Grammys has the balls to do that.
After that, Rory would go on to get canceled or get tracked by Kendrick fans who resurfaced some of the old tweets that he used to have that were very problematic. They weren't very well thought out. He was probably it was 15 years ago. So this was tweets that came out as early as 2010, then proceeded on to 2014, 15, 16. And they even mentioned Beyonce, which those tweets were also very problematic. And after that, everybody on the internet was set ablaze. So Rory would hop onto Twitter Spaces and defend himself in the worst way you could defend yourself. He was in a space with nothing but Kendrick fans. I mean, like I said before, these people were literally named Certified Boogeyman, Whooping Feet, and Kendrick Fan 87. So as he was in there, it immediately goes left because they start attacking him.
Speak your mind.
Do it or don't. Do it or don't.
Because I promise your mother.
Do it or don't.
Ain't nobody
Do it or
can
don't.
save you, white boy.
And it was unclear if those fans were really mad about his tweets or if this was a selective cancellation that they were participating in because they were Kendrick fans. Yes, the tweets were really bad, but it didn't really ever feel like in that space, outside of a few folks, that he was being held accountable for the initial wrongdoing. Well, that's what the Joe Budden podcast, would react to. And Mark Lamont Hill would hold his brother down.
Right. So back in the day on old school Twitter, there was no retweet button. You typed RT and then wrote what the other person said. So sometimes people were interpreting him as saying something that he actually didn't say. He was retweeting somebody else.
Remember, Mark and Rory are both Kappas, so he treated them with grace. And not only are they Kappas, I get the impression that they speak a lot and that they have a dynamic. So he was talking around the subject in a way that was indicative of that. One thing I couldn't help but notice is how ill-informed Mona was.
Is that where you want to start, Mona?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I don't know what y'all talking about right now.
She didn't even know what Rory did. And to me, that might be an issue moving forward. I mean, this is the Joe Budden podcast. You would think she would know about what's going on in pop culture, but she didn't. And it was reflected in the way that she would go about breaking down this topic, instead talking about cancellation in the general sense of terms versus knowing exactly what happened. It almost seems like she's going out of her way to be informed, and it's coming off like lackadaisical preparation for a show, which is platforming her to places she's never been before. Then Joe lets the cannon go and starts saying that Rory was smug, arrogant, and he was wrong in how he dealt with it, and that he did everything that he could have done bad in terms of dealing with the cancellation. Now, while he did let the cannon go, I do feel like, he was completely right. Rory was just, why would you go into a space full of those types of fans? I think he should have handled it much like Park said on his own show.
Especially when you have a platform like he has.
Right.
You could just do it right there.
And he should have invited like a third guest who could speak to the nuances and of the time, but also reconcile with the fact that the initial tweets were wrong. So to me, even though Joe was calling out his former co-host, friend of me, he still was right in what he said. Mark, like I said in previous times, said it was a different time, highlighting how Twitter back in the day was a place where people would say the most outrageous thing. And Joe even says that that was the case and he would even partake in this.
I was there for it. I participated.
The Twitter days. Plus, we also have to remember the connections of most of the podcasts of the old Twitter days. Ice himself was part of a cancellation attempt when his old tweets resurfaced. So he didn't really go too crazy on Rory, which is the right thing to do because he has the same type of accusations in his closet. So he kind of left it alone. And Ish gave good advice about, you don't even really got to be up there because it invites lines of questioning that aren't really productive and that blend the line between inquisitive and accusatory and insulting. Joe then says that he feels like there's laws for white people to operate in certain spaces. I assume he means, places of cultural commentary, whether it be hip hop or otherwise. So that's what he said there. Mark also acknowledged why Rory did act the way he did, saying that he probably felt defensive because at a certain point, people on the space were saying things like, I'ma see you, I'ma F you up, and you don't want nothing to do with me. I'ma see you, I'ma fly out there. Urgh. There was one dude who literally sounded like he was Macho Man. Then Joe ends the whole segment by saying he believes and he knows that Rory isn't racist.
Do I think Rory's racist? No.
Of course not.
Which to me was a kind of great thing for him to do because a lot of people, especially with Joe and Rory's past, they would have left Rory out to dry. But you get the sense that the whole podcast wanted to hold him down. So it wasn't necessarily the shooting or the type of thing you do to a foe. And it indicated to me, hey, man, Rory is cool with most of the show. Outside of whatever he got going on with Joe, I mean, Mark held it down. Even Parks held it down. Ice didn't really participate. And he even said, like, you can't really apologize. Because then they started talking about some other person that apologized for their past tweets and how people were mad at those apologies. So, yes, this was a selective cancellation engineered by the fact that Rory had an opinion that other folks did not agree with. But at the very root cause of this, the tweets were bad. They weren't good. And since then, Rory has deleted all of his tweets. I don't think the account is coming back. People are saying that, he just deactivated it. It's going to come back. And I don't know. I think it's best if Rory just starts a new account, leans into the fact that he was wrong. He's going to have to do another apology, as the episode that he dropped on Friday, the apology wasn't satisfactory to a lot of people. And my suggestion of him having someone on the show that could kind of speak to why his tweets was wrong, what he was thinking, and also have a commentary about what social media was like back then is probably the best route. One thing I will also end my video by saying is that Rory really has to interrogate why did he feel that going on spaces and arguing for 4 hours was a good idea. It's an intense character flaw and something that he needs to navigate moving forward. And at his age, he probably should have implemented more of a greater strategy because he made this whole thing worse than it had to be. And the reason it ended up on TMZ was because of his own actions. And he really has to investigate when he enters these spaces. Is he really listening to people, or is he just listening to disrupt and cut people off and be argumentative? But let me know what you think in the comments. Do you feel like the Joe Budden podcast covered this in the right way? I know there's a lot of people who want this situation covered in a certain way, but there's people who are connected to Rory who actually care for him and feel like Rory has looked out for them. I mean, Rory is someone who has put a lot of people in place and given them connections and looked out for them. So they're not necessarily going to fire on Rory, given the good grace that he has built up with a lot of people. With that said, follow me on Instagram, The Stop TV. Follow me on Twitter, The Stop TV. And make sure you tap in with my Patreon, where I've done extensive coverage about this subject and even have a space with Rory where he talks about the situation. And I think in that space, we did get to more of a, one-on-one conversation where people on the call were not necessarily just Kendrick fans, but also they did have issues with the tweets. I thought it was a good conversation. And, you know, Homeboy loves to have these type of dialogues. All right, y'all. This is Danny from The Stop. Peace.